So someone who, and the companies want to know how to use influencers, want to know how to use that content. The whole world is changing, but someone here, a media behemoth, if you like, is next on stage, whose company is actually looking at how they make that branded content work, how they adapt content, how they use people like Hussein. So please welcome to the stage the global CEO for Time Inc., Joseph Ripp.
Thank you. Now, I normally start my presentation with a rap, but after Hussein's presentation, I've decided not to do that. You know, I'm going to talk to you today, and could you run the video, please?
Our number one leader is somebody who persevered through the criticism.
What a treat.
This is an incredibly turbulent time in the world of media. I came back to Time Inc. after many years of being away. I started off in my career early on as an accountant. I rose through the ranks. I was the CFO of Time Warner. I was vice chairman of AOL. I ran a pharmaceutical services company. I ran a newspaper chain. I ran a private equity firm. In essence, I can't keep a job. But I was asked 2.5 years ago to come back by Jeff Bewkes to take Time Inc. public. It was spun off from Time Warner. So to take the magazine division of Time Warner and take it into the public marketplace. And this is a very turbulent time in media. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But Time Inc. as a company has one of the most powerful portfolio of brands in the industry. It has over 98 different brands. You all recognize these names wherever you are around the world. The question is, what could you do with those brands? If you think of them as a magazine company, then you think of, well, that business is shrinking. What can you do with that? The point is, this is a great company with great brands, and we really do engage our audiences. Each and every day, Time Inc. creates incredible cultural moments that get people to stop, break, and scanning their pages, and to really engage with us. And in all the conversations I've been having with CMOs, with marketers, it's about, can we create engaging experiences? And Time Inc. does that very well. Our journalism, our creativity, our narration through the written word and imagery are really, really powerful. You can always remember the things that Time Inc. does because we really do reach and engage a lot of people. In fact, we reach right now 120 million people in a monthly global print, 150 million in global digital. That's up 83% in the last 2 years since we've been back. We have over 600 events annually. We believe events really do engage people, and we're really growing those even further. 200 million via social, 160 million consumer database, and we've done over 2 billion videos. We're going to show you about what we mean by engaging audiences and passionate audiences at scale and why that's important for the future. But the entire industry is in transition. When I left 14 years ago and left the industry to go do other things in private equity and other places, this industry was relatively stable. I started off in my career when home box office first started off, and we watched the revolution of cable television and what that did. We all were satisfied in the United States. We had 5 channels that we watched. Then we went to 500 channels. Now we're going to 50,000 channels. Another revolution is happening right now because industry is moving quickly. The media landscape is changing. The traditional media companies are all threatened by the transition. In fact, it has never been more turbulent. Global media resides in a very unpredictable world right now. It used to be something that we could forecast. If you look on the industry rate of change and unpredictability, media is right up there with the software industry, the oil and gas industry. I've never seen more change. In fact, at Cannes last year, we all talked about there was $28 billion of global media accounts, global accounts up for review with the ad agencies because CMOs are saying to themselves, I can't break through the clutter. There's so much change going on, we've got to figure it out. For a traditional media company, they're asking themselves the question, how do I survive in the future? If you're a network, what is a network in the future when all things ever produced are available on an iPhone? The digitization of content, the use of mobile devices has dramatically changed the way we all work and interact with the world. 7.2 billion people there are on the planet right now, and 6.1 billion of them have cell phones. And mobile is changing everything. Only 4.5 billion, by the way, have running water in toilets. So there's more mobile phones out there than people have access to sanitary facilities. The reality is mobile is changing everything. It's changing the way we consume. It's changing the things that we do every day. We're no longer sitting in front of our televisions. We're no longer just reading magazines or newspapers. We're engaging in those mobile devices all the time. And in this world, the average mobile phone user is checking their phone over 100 times a day. So the question for the traditional media outlets is, how do we engage? How do we reach those people? Hussein has figured that out. That's why he's doing so well with his channels. How do you engage that audience that has the attention span of a goldfish? In fact, less than the attention span of a goldfish. The average attention span of an adult in the United States has dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to 8 seconds in 2013. And according to a study by Microsoft, that's 1 second less than a goldfish. So in this new world, how do you find engagement? If you're a marketer, how does your message get through? How does it get absorbed? Those are the questions that are being debated around the world in media companies and marketers with CMOs saying, how do I break through? We have never before had more advertising coming at us than in the history of man. You think of where you go and how you engage, whether you go in an elevator, a car, a train, wherever you are, you're being bombarded with advertising messages. They're all over the place, and marketers are saying to themselves, how do I break through this clutter? I've spent an awful lot of time talking to marketers since I've been back into the business, and they're all trying to figure out, how do I create engagement? How do I break through this clutter that's become advertising today? And how do I make my messages more relevant to the audiences I'm trying to reach? The average shelf life of a CMO is now less than that of a CEO. They're getting fired more and more. The reason all those accounts were put up for grabs last year is because CFOs and others are asking themselves hard questions. Am I getting the return from my marketing message? Lots of questions being asked about measurement, about value. Is it really working? Am I breaking through? No one really knows. There's been an awful lot of advertising spent on the digital space over the last couple of years that went rushing headlong into digital, and a lot of people are starting to find out it doesn't really work so well. When you're putting your advertising next to 5 ways to feed your gerbil, it's not an engaging message. And now people are starting to question, does that work for me? Am I getting it? We have ad blocking going. And why is ad blocking going on? Because most of ads online are annoying, and consumers are being annoyed by them. Ad blocking is up over 30% in some countries in Europe right now and rising across the world because consumers are rejecting the experience. They're saying, this doesn't work for me. I don't want to engage with that. So advertisers are asking themselves, how can I engage? So I came back to a traditional magazine company. In fact, Time Warner defined Time Inc. as the magazine division of Time Warner, which was a very destructive label, because the moment you call yourself by your distribution vehicle, you limit yourself to your distribution vehicle. When I came back, the first thing I said to the organization and to the Wall Street Journal was, we're no longer a magazine company. In fact, we're one of the world's premier content companies, and we're going to be focusing on distributing our content across multiple platforms. Our strategic framework recognizes for Time Inc., we recognize that the media landscape is turbulent, it's unpredictable, and we've got to really embrace the future and make sure that our great content is distributed across multiple platforms. So the North Star of Time Inc. is rebuilding the company for revenue crossover. The company had been declining in its revenues for over 10 years since my return. 10 years prior to my return. I've been there for 2.5 years. We're now forecasting revenue growth again. We have found the path to turn it around, and that's an important component because we're now public. And so what were those pillars of revenue crossover? The first is configuring our team for leadership, using our authority to build digital properties that maximize our scale, better targeting and customization with data, branded content and native solutions, video, and new experiences. But configuring our team for leadership in the current media environment, that's something you can say. We have 8,000 of us working at Time Inc., but Time Inc. is starting to become a magnet for new talent. We've moved our offices downtown. We used to have 1,642 offices in our New York location. We're now down to 100, and people couldn't be happier. We have, in fact, over 1/2 of the company has not been there for more than 3 years. We've done an awful lot of turnover in talent. We focused an awful lot on the culture, making sure that the organization is culturally ready for change. You know, Lou Gerstner is a friend of mine. As many of you know, he turned around the IBM Corporation, probably one of the most successful turnarounds in history. And his arguments to me all the time was, culture trumps strategy every day of the week. So we have focused very, very hard at making sure we have a real culture that embraces change, that embraces a strategy for transformation. And that has really been really helping getting us forward and back to revenue growth. We're using our authority to build digital properties that maximize the benefits of our scale. Our great storytelling works really well on desktop, mobile, and social platforms. In fact, the 2 years prior to my arrival, our websites, our digital traffic hadn't grown in those 2 years. As I said, we're now up 83%. We're over 120 million in digital uniques worldwide. And we've done that by simply focusing on making sure we're distributing our content properly on those platforms. We're also better targeting and customization with data. I spent a lot of my time in the private equity space in the world of big data and investing in companies that were providing data for B2B business services. And data and targeting is what's it all about. Media companies need that roadmap to customize individuals' content and marketing experiences, and Time Inc. is investing heavily in data, and that's taking us forward. And our biggest investment recently we announced was an investment in Viant. Viant is a data-driven leader in people-based marketing. It's people-based data that we have, which is deterministic. It's not probabilistic. As many of you know, most cookie-based data is probabilistic. You're probably an upscale woman living in France, or you're probably an upscale man living in Boston. You're probably that. That's cookie-based. Viant is deterministic. By using its database of 120 billion registrations that it has, by using the registrations that Time Inc. has, over 150 million, combining those two together, we're not only able to track individuals down to the person. We know on who you are, where you live, and we know what devices you have. We can track you across multiple devices, whether that be desktop, whether that be the cell phone, laptops, whatever it is. We can track you across multiple devices, and we believe the combination of Time Inc.'s premium content and Viant's data-driven approach with people and deterministic data will really give us an advantage in this field, and has created an awful lot of excitement in the industry for us. We also believe in branded content and native solutions. You know, Time Inc. is one of the greatest producers of content in the world. With our over 100 brands, we produce thousands of stories every week. And CMOs are increasingly saying to us, they're trying to figure out how to break through that clutter that is now today's media environment, and they want their brands to really engage and target and talk to consumers. So there's a lot of conversations we're having with people about content. I've talked to many CEOs who have tried going down the content path, trying to create it themselves. And what I've said to them repeatedly is, I don't make cars and makeup, and you don't make content. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be really good at it. You've got to understand your audiences. You've got to be able to reach people and engage them and excite them. And most companies who try to create their own content don't do so well because it's not authentic. It doesn't work. And we believe that native is going to be a huge business going forward. In the United States, native content right now is about a $4 billion industry, projected to be a $9 billion industry in just 2 to 3 years from now. We think it's a great opportunity for growth, and we're working very closely with all of our advertising partners on trying to create native solutions and native content for them. And we're going to show you some examples of that. Now you look at that video, you go, what does that got to do with Time Inc.? We produced that video in our subsidiary Hello Giggles. It was out about 2 months ago. To date, 54 million people have watched fully that video. And it's not even including the partial views. So that is what is going on the web right now, what is going on in the distribution of content right now. And we know that video is an important component of what we can do for advertisers, and we're focusing on that. And I'm going to show you one more video that we did for one of our automobile clients that's custom. That video was produced rather inexpensively, and to date, 5 million people have watched it. So what we've said to ourselves, what we're really good at is talking and engaging consumers, and we can do that in all forms, whether that be in the growth of digital that we've experienced, 83% over the last 2 years, whether that be in custom and native content that we're producing for our customers. The opportunity for Time Inc. to really engage consumers is there, and that's how we're focused. In this great turbulent time of media, we can all look in what I've said in speeches before to the media companies, we can all look forward and say, oh my God, the world is really changing. Or we can all look forward and say, oh my God, the world is really changing. How do we take our piece of that? The traditional media forms, whether that be cable television, the networks, the content producers, it is all moving. It is another revolution that's going on right now. And everyone's trying to figure out, how do I survive in that new world? It's why the stock market for media companies right now, it's been rather turbulent. Because people are looking forward and saying, how do you survive into the future? When all things ever produced, as I said, are available on the click of a button online, what is a network anymore? Who's going to pay for all the content when millennials don't really want to pay for things anymore? Who's paying for all that? Is it really all going to be all YouTube videos? So the question for all the traditional media companies is, how do we survive in this new world? And Time Inc. is making sure that we do survive in this new world by really embracing all forms of distribution. We think our brands translate very well into sight, sound, and motion. In fact, we've had 100% improvement in our video streams year over year. You know, we used to we interview actually the most important people of the world all the time with our journalists, and we never filmed it. We now ask our journalists to show up with an iPhone and film their interview. When our reporters are going now to the fashion shows around the world, and we attend every one of them, they're coming back into the car and holding out their iPhone and recording something called the taxi cab videos. So they record their impressions of what they saw at the fashion show, and that gets loaded instantly online to our websites. When our reporters are writing a story for the websites, for the magazines, whether it's about Bruce Jenner, whatever it may be about, they're now recording a short video about their impressions, why they did the story. When we did the famous card from Trump on Time magazine with Trump with the bald eagle, we did an outtake about that with showing the bald eagle flapping his wings and messing his hair. It was actually quite funny. We had 4.5 billion social impressions from that, as people were talking about and sharing it and kicking it around. So the opportunity for media companies to embrace the other forms of distribution are there, and we're doing that very well. We also think there is opportunity in new experiences. Time Inc. does over 650 events a year like this, only quite larger. Our largest is the Essence Festival in New Orleans. We have 550,000 people show up for 3 days. We believe that experiences really do count, so we're doing an awful lot of gatherings. We have an awful lot of things there. We're also doing things with sports, with youth sports. We've just created and bought a series of companies that are digitizing the practice of youth sports in the United States and around the world. And we're going to be using that to both engage youth athletes and engage content providers, and also engage the major leagues and talking to youth sports. So we're looking at our brands and looking at our experiences and say, what else can you do with these brands and how far can you go? So the opportunity for Time Inc. is for growth. This is an old media company, It's been around for over 100 years. In fact, the operations of the UK, which Marcus Rich is going to talk about, it's been around for over 150 years, many of our titles. We've been around for a long time, and the question for us is, how do we survive in this new world? How do we survive in a new world where content is distributed in multiple places? Sometimes it's questionable, sometimes it's not, and we think we have found a path for our growth, because at the end of the day, we firmly believe that quality content is always going to be important. Engagement is always going to be important. It's not about 5 ways to feed your gerbil. You're not going to sell a whole lot of Toyotas next to that. It's about really creating engaging, quality experiences that people want to interact with. And we have a few more minutes left, and I'll be happy to open the floor up for any questions that you may have. Yes, in the front.
What's your thought on taking stakes in emerging companies and perhaps using some of your branding power?
The question is, what's your thought about what about taking stakes in emerging companies? The reality is, for a while there, it was hard for us to buy because anything emerging, anything that had a digital title on it was just ridiculously priced. I had a woman in my office not too long ago. She had 18 million of revenues after 7 years of work, $2 million of losses, and told me she wouldn't accept less than $200 million for her company because it was so valuable. I laughed her out of my office, quite frankly. But the prices are coming down now. People are getting reasonable. The reality is there's a lot of people now coming to talk to us, because one of the problems that most little companies have, startups, is distribution. It's hard to figure out, how do I get distribution? How do I get talent? How do I get content? We have over 1,000 journalists working for us, and we can really produce great content. So what we're doing is we're selectively buying companies, and when they come into the family, we're letting them operate by themselves, because I firmly believe don't break their culture, but we're letting them dip into the cookie jar that is Time Inc. and then growing those companies pretty rapidly. We're very, very happy with the acquisitions we made. In fact, the Viant acquisition that we've just taken on, they were a good company, north of 100 million in revenue, doing a pretty good job. I've had 5 CEOs write me letters, and now we're having presentations in front of the CEOs of major corporations from around the world talking about, how can you help me? Facebook is getting, 80% of all the dollars going into mobile? And many marketers don't really want all that to happen. They're looking for some alternatives. And Viant gives them an alternative. It's a people-based targeting platform like Facebook. So we get pretty excited about it. I think, there's a lot of activity out there in M&A right now, and I think prices are becoming more reasonably set. Even so today, the Yahoo was announced at $8 billion, now all of a sudden it's $2 to $4 billion. So prices are getting more reasonable out there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.